Hey book readers, today I'm taking a moment to share some thoughts about the books I read this month. I'm talking about everything from a fantasy novella and an underrated time travel book to a cinematic sci-fi adventure and a well-written historical fiction. Let's get it going. First up is Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. The protagonist in this sci-fi book is Mickey 7, an expendable of a new human colony on an icy planet. Now, what's an expendable exactly? Well, it's a human whose consciousness is uploaded to an identical copy, or copies, of a man named Mickey in this case. One of these copies is activated every time that Mickey dies, which Mickey does quite a bit since that's his job. He's doing the dangerous, deadly jobs for the good of the colony. Hence the title, Expendable. However, the seventh iteration of Mickey, dubbed Mickey 7, is presumed dead during a mission, only to not actually die. So the problem becomes how two Mickeys exist at once in a colony where resources are incredibly scarce. This is the secret Mickey 7 has to protect, while simultaneously navigating the new knowledge that the human colony has been set up on a planet with previously existing sentient life, and that's a big problem. Mickey 7 is a quality science fiction novel that I gave 4 dog ears to. It won't blow you away, but the premise is good and the tension is believable. Also worth noting, and part of the reason I read this book, is that a movie based on the book is going to come out in March of 2024. It's going to star Robert Pattinson and Mark Ruffalo, so hopefully it'll be good. And I'm excited about it since this story seems especially tailor-made for theaters. Next up is Thornhedge by Kingfisher. This fantasy novella is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty that flips the script on who you're rooting for and what the love story looks like. It also changes the relationships and family dynamics of the main players in the fairy tale. I really like this short book, so 5 dog ears on this one. It features the fairy world and a changeling, like another fantasy novel I read recently, The Broken Sword. And that's what cemented in my mind that changelings are bad news. A quick PSA here, if you think your sibling is just absolutely the worst, keep in mind that they might be a changeling, so it's not completely their fault. Another book I read this month was Oona Out of Order by Margarita Montemor. If you want science fiction for your main course and time travel as a side dish, this is the book for you. Yes, the flow of Oona's life is strange once she finds out on her 19th birthday that she's going to skip around to different points in her personal timeline for a year at a time. But this book is mostly about the relationships she forms and how in the world is she going to maintain them with this annual time traveling affliction. In essence, how can a sporadic time traveler function as normally as possible? I'm giving Oona Out of Order 4 dog ears. Now, I'm a big fan of time travel books. This one was a little different, though that's not a bad thing necessarily. What's kind of unique is that there's no real attempt to figure out why Oona is jumping randomly through the years. You're just supposed to simply accept that and put yourself in her place as she finds herself in much older versions of herself and in relationships that she doesn't even remember. Another book I read in November was Wolfsong by T.J. Klune. This officially rubber stamps 2023 as the year of Klune for me, and I'm ending with what isn't your typical run-of-the-mill T.J. Klune book. It's definitely darker than normal for him, but it still features creatures, something he loves to do. In this case, it's werewolves. The main character in Wolfsong is Ox, a teen boy we see become a man over the course of the book. Klune makes it seem like Ox is possibly on the autism spectrum or has some learning disabilities, but he also paints him as an innocent, uber-loyal character. And once he finds his pack, or people, he discovers his identity and the strength within himself. But back to the werewolves. A family of them moves down the street from Ox, and the youngest son of the family of werewolves instantly falls in love with Ox. So while the family can shift from human form to werewolf form, Ox is just a normal human being. Or is he? Anyway, the werewolf family is important in the werewolf world, and they have a lot of baggage, both as a family and as the individuals of that family. I'm only going to give this one 3 dog ears. The book sprinkles in fantasy romance, power struggles, and some violence, some sexual abuse, and psychological abuse. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. It's also not my Klune cup of tea. I want more of the lovable characters he creates and the humor that he usually puts throughout his books. And the last point here about why I didn't necessarily love this book is that it's just way too long for this kind of novel. I mean, the characters kept rehashing plot points or just not getting from point A to point B quickly enough. Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I loved A Gentleman in Moscow, which is the only other book I've read by this author. And part of what made it so great was the detailed writing. It's just so good. And that is in this book as well. If only the premise, which is a 1930s New York social drama, would have been more interesting to me, which it wasn't. The book starts out with the love triangle. Nothing wrong with that. I'm fine with love triangles. Great shape, great emotion. But I wasn't sure who I should be cheering for at the first point of the book. I had questions almost immediately. Should Tinker be with Katie or Eve? Is Eve a jerk? Is Tinker actually a great guy? Maybe I just missed some cues about whether one dame seemed to be a better fit for Tinker or if they're just supposed to simply stay a platonic threesome. And I can say dame because it's based in the 30s, right? That's okay. We're good with that. In the novel, there's this big accident that happens, and there's some debate about if you should be living on Easy Street or working hard for a living, and there are a couple of decent twists and turns. This one peaked at 4 dog years for me. It mainly touches on the question of perception versus reality, and where love fits into the equation. One final reason it doesn't quite get to 5 dog years is that it just drags a little bit in the middle. And that's offset slightly because it picks up steam and was simply unputdownable by the end, but again, not quite 5 dog years. And last, and probably least, is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a fantasy book that deals with magic and djinn, and it sounded really appealing to me, but I got a third of the way through and just realized it wasn't for me. I had no interest in continuing it, so I just marked it down as a DNF. I think this was a case of reading a book when I wasn't actually in the mood for it, so I plan to give Chakraborty another shot soonish by reading The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. I mean, I liked the writing, it was really good, and it was just the story that didn't quite click for me. There you have it, the highs and lows of my November 2023 reading journey. Remember to like, subscribe, and let me know if you've read any of these as well in the comments. Happy reading!